Hey guys, how you doing? This is Matt Daly, CEO at StructionSite, and I am joined today by none other than Mr. Josh Canner of smartvid.io. Would be very excited to welcome you guys today to the session. Josh and I are going to be talking about all things reality capture, AI, analytics, and everything in between. We're going to jump to current state of reality capture, talk a little bit about what is happening in the world today, what that means for both of our businesses. We're going to jump to a little bit about what we are currently planning to do as partners today and going forward. We're going to get into some real nuts and bolts. We're going to talk about a customer case study and a shared customer that we have and how they're using both platforms to achieve different but also similar goals that are related to each other. We're going to finish with a little bit of some future state. So just talk about where's this technology going? What do we see coming down the pipe that both we're excited about, but also that our customers are excited about? And then we'll close out with the how do you get started using one or both of these platforms. So Josh, I'm going to open it up to you, let you do a quick intro for yourself.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Matt. Yeah, I've been doing construction tech since 2005. So I think, Matt, you were in high school then, maybe?
Come on, man. You can't be dating me on here. Graduating from high school, Josh.
There you go. Okay. So I've been, fighting the fight in trying to bring technology to the edge. I mean, really, you could call it all reality capture, but in 2005, it was about bringing construction field processes. We called it field management for quality control, safety, commissioning, even bringing documents to the field. And man, the industry's come a long way, and StructionSite's an amazing example of that. Now, 15 years later, we used to have tablet PCs, that had like a 2-hour battery life and weighed 5 pounds. Then the iPad, and now it's so easy to capture information with 360 imagery. My background has been all about going through this transition with the industry of think of it as capture. So how do you get better data to now that there's so much data, what we're focused on at SmartVid is how do you use that data? So how do you take that information and use it to reduce key areas of project delivery risk? So we're super psyched to have StructionSite as a partner. SmartVid.io is all about using data that comes from the field. 360 image capture, 360 video capture is exploding. So for us, it's really important to be able to use our analytics to analyze all that data and extract insights around, in particular, the areas of safety. So really looking forward to talking in this section about how we're working together and going into the DPR case study we'll be talking about, and how it's not just about capture anymore. It's about how do you use the data and how safety and production tracking and all the things you can do with the information we're seeing it add a ton of value, save time, add a ton of value, and reduce risk for our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's sort of ground ourselves in the today for a little bit, and I'll ask you. So, like you mentioned, 360 photos, 360 video. What is the sort of current state of reality capture look like? What are the most common sources of data that you are seeing? What are some sources of data that maybe you'd like to see more of? And then we can jump into like, what are the sort of main problems being solved today?
Sounds great, Matt. Yeah, so SmartVid.io, at our core, we have an AI engine, which we've nicknamed Vinny. So it's after a superintendent from Jersey, who was one of our first users. So Vinny, it's like IBM has Watson, we've got Vinny. Vinny's been trained now on over 80 different categories of visual risk. There's simple stuff like PPE, and we'll come back to that later when we talk about DPR, but all the way to really advanced stuff like improper body positioning, folks on ladders, people and equipment being too close to each other. And all those things are analyzed on top of imagery that can come from a bunch of different sources. So that's a key point for us, Matt, is that when it comes to reality capture, we're at SmartVid, we're being like Switzerland. We're neutral. We're looking at all the different places where photos can come from or videos, and we're looking to analyze them to try and make it as easy as possible to turn on Vinny's analytics. What we're doing is we're hooking right into your existing reality capture processes. So what we've seen, to answer your question, is that still. It's kind of like the old days when paper and pen was the way people did things most of the time. We still see a ton of 2D image capture on phones. Standard progress photos, milestone documentation, creating, field reports, photos associated with checklists and other observation formats. And we see that coming from the standard construction management platforms, whether it's Autodesk BIM 360 or Procore, or starting to see some Oracle Aconex. But also we pull data, both 2D and 360 from systems like Box, Ignite, and of course, from our work with you guys at StructionSite. I'd say 360s it's the fastest growing category of reality capture that we're seeing. There's relative to the others. And that's why it's so exciting to be partnering with you guys.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, would you say there's any limitations right now? Like what are some things that maybe hold reality capture back today, whether that be the hardware, the software, the partnerships, the technology? Like what are, I think we all see this incredible vision, and we're finally starting to realize it in some cases together. What are some of the things that maybe are a little bit limiting about the sort of state of reality capture today?
Yeah, I have my opinion. I'd love to hear yours too after I tell you, but we're not in a technology challenge anymore. This is really about process. It's kind of a virtuous loop, kind of a chicken and egg, where doing consistent reality capture, let's call it job site walks, progress documentation, even in some cases, milestone documentation or benchmark inspections. Like, it used to be a real pain in the ass, and you had to dedicate somebody to do it. And I think that created a process challenge with a lot of companies where, at the end of the day, who is going to do this thing, and why was it important, and how do you actually get someone who can do it consistently, getting the same data and actually spending the time on it. Particularly when in the past, I think progress tracking and a fair number of reality capture kinds of applications, unless it was like to the millimeter accurate for all those use cases, around existing site conditions, or maybe you're trying to get something in some place that you weren't sure if it was going to fit. So like a few edge cases like that, or some of the well-established use cases around, pre-pour and post-pour inspections and things like that. Like it was hard to get people to do it because it seemed like it took a long time. So now what we're seeing is with applications like StructionSite, with things like video walks, with the simple ease of use and the low cost of a Ricoh Theta or these other devices, not only is it easy to do, the prices come down, and then back to this virtuous cycle. There's a lot more you do with the data. It's not just going into some folder that you can't access it. It's now tied to plans. You can actually move backwards in a timeline. And with plug-in AI, like we're talking about, you can also now use it to automatically generate observations that you never had before. So that's my 2 cents. I don't know. What do you think, Matt? Is this a tech or a process?
Yeah, I think I think it's a little bit of both, but it's also just the habits that the builders that are out there have built. And I think the reason why, to sort of summarize what you said, is there's this like balance of time and value. Mm-hmm. And what the shift that's happening right now is, it used to be lots of time, very little value. And what we're seeing is the time to capture and monitor and things have gone down, less manual, faster to do, easier to do. The value of that data is going up.
Yeah.
So I think you're continuing to see that shift from the time to capture and get the data is going down. The value of what you get from it for putting that work in is going up, right? So the shift is happening, I think, as we're speaking right now. And I'm excited about what you guys are doing and the fact that the data can flow from one system to another, because it really tips the scales even faster in terms of the value you get from the data.
Totally. Yeah. It's like that virtual cycle. And I think reality capture has, in some ways, it's got a bad name in our industry, because I think, and you guys are redefining it, but I think in some ways it's associated really with like deep, heavy, like scanning and point clouds. And yeah. I'll spend the time to do that if it's an existing condition assessment I need to do. And, we got to figure out, we have to do a sort of an as is model, or before we pour the deck, like we want to make sure it's right, because that's expensive to fix,
Yep.
But now you don't have to, now there's a ton more data you can get out of it. It doesn't have to be something that's so, expensive or takes so much time, like you're saying.
Yeah, totally. And I think we'll probably jump more into that as we talk about and start to think more about the sort of future of reality capture data. I want to shift us right now into the direction that we're headed as partners. I think like philosophically, one thing that is just the way we think about partnerships and data. And, we say this often at our company, which is like, our customers own the data, and our job is to try to get it wherever it is that they want it to be. And certainly in the name of tipping the scales towards getting more value for the data you're already collecting, I think partnerships with companies like yours make tons of sense. And at the end of the day, we're not, trying to be a place where we trap people's information. We're really just trying to make sure that we're shipping it to all the right places. In a lot of cases with the shared customers we have with you guys, it's people want that information to end up in a software like smartvid.io for analysis as well. But I'd love to kind of hear maybe how you're looking at the direction that we're heading as partners as well.
Yeah, information. I think it's incumbent on us as software providers to allow the information that we're making available to be accessible in other systems, because no one of us is doing everything. I think history is showing, if we look at, for example, how the leading construction management players in the space are behaving, there's, whether it's Procore or Autodesk, there's a ton of value in having APIs and basically open data access, because it's better for the customer. And at the end of the day, that's the way you build a relationship that lasts, is by doing what's right for the customer. And now with data being so important, the approach you guys are taking of allowing customers to work with other providers like us and be able to get more from the reality capture information that they're already gathering, it's a win for the customer, and as a result, it's a win for us as companies.
Yeah, totally. I mean, well, let's just actually jump straight into speaking of data being shared by a shared customer, customer case study. I know you had mentioned you guys are also doing some work with DPR Construction. Yep. And the team over there. Would love to hear a little bit about what you're hearing from that team. What are the problems that they're solving? What are the applications? If there are any roadblocks to further success there, but also just like what's the value that they're getting, and anything else that you think is worth sharing about that partnership.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to share. So I'll frame it out, and then we jump right in, Matt, as we're talking about this. So the DPR partnership is really interesting for us because it ties into a bunch of different sources of visual data, and it's at the enterprise level. So we parallel with the larger scale deployment like you guys have at DPR, where what they're able to do is pull in StructionSite data into SmartVid, and then they're running our safety analytics on top of the data that's coming from multiple jobs. So there's two components to the value. The first is for a specific project. So at the project level, there are a whole set of things. Like I mentioned, there's 80 different things that Vinny's looking for, and those can be peeled off and turned into actual daily kinds of recommendations for the particular jobs. If there's particular kinds of work going on, if there's particular kinds of risks being seen, those can actually be actionable at the project level. At the overall enterprise level, the value kind of explodes because now what you're able to do is, and it's a great thing about reality capture. You're getting, I think a really just simple way to think of it is you've got more observations. It's just more eyes looking at what's going on. And as long as you can keep privacy and you can make sure that, nobody's getting in trouble here, it's all about the data. Now you can use that data with the automation that we have to be able to not just find something on a job, but to be able to look across the whole company, across multiple jobs, and be able to trend a whole bunch of different indicators, everything from work at height to even COVID metrics like social distancing and mask wearing to things like housekeeping. And the net result of both of those is that you actually get more data, more visibility because you have more observations. And you can use that in dashboards that we provide to DPR, either through our application, which are like up to the minute, up to date, or we also have Power BI templates that they can use, not just internally, but where this all goes is you can use that within your risk management department and then also use it as you're talking with your broker or your carrier and show them how you have data that your peers don't have so that it gets you credit, and particularly in today's really hard insurance market, for the kinds of data, the kinds of proactive measures that you're taking. So just to summarize, there's project level actions, there's enterprise level visibility for understanding trends and prioritizing. And then we're seeing customers start to use that to help have better footing in these really important conversations that they're having when it's time to get insurance for a new job, or maybe there's a renewal for a particular line of coverage, and be able to show that. So those are some of the highlights. There is one other, it's just one other benefit that came up in particular with DPR is really interesting, is that it's also taking, you can think of it as like really mundane, kind of time consuming kinds of observations that used to be done by field personnel. Well, Vinny can do those now. I'll give you an example, right? So there's, when you're doing safety observations and you're doing safety inspections, a lot of times you'll see PPE, there's a lot of time potentially spent in the field on what the safety team might call, or the risk team might call, sort of lower value observations for field folks. Like, oh, okay, you're not wearing a hard hat, put your hard hat on. On the process side, what DPR and other customers are trying to do is up level the conversations that are happening about risk. And by having Vinny do a bunch of the mundane stuff like PPE and a variety of, that's just one example, different kinds of ladder usage. You can then have the actual field teams and the safety personnel. They now have time to focus on more important and strategic stuff, more behavioral types of observations and the like. So there's a lot of detail there, but I think that's, if you think of this concept of more observations from DPR means project level, enterprise level, and then also risk benefits, it's a great example of how StructionSite data is being used by a joint customer.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And we see similar things here where it's actually fascinating to sort of watch what looks a lot to us like a very parallel track in terms of data that's providing value at the project level while sort of removing some of the type of work that those in the field just generally don't love. Like, for example, walking around counting things is just not the type of work that like is inherently like enjoyable about being in the construction industry. But for us, I think on the production side, it's really, and working with a company like DPR who has a self-performed drywall group, and is very, very focused and already has, I think, a more robust production tracking system than a lot of what we see. But obviously there's still a lot of room for improvement there. We see sort of at the project level, it's really all about like catching those issues early and not getting off track before you realize you're off track, and now it's too late, and you've already, the job is over, and you got to buy another 3 weeks worth of labor just to get to where you were supposed to be as actually completing it. And so I think we see very similar things there, but very, very also, I would say similar again at the enterprise level, where suddenly you have the level of the questions you can ask at that level are suddenly very interesting, right? When you start to ask questions about like, how does this look? How are we producing in this region? How are we producing on this project compared to others? How are we producing, how many linear feet of framing can we get in on this type of project in this region? And then how can we use that information to feed it back into our estimating process and be smarter about this next time? And so that's another thing that we're really trying to drive our customers towards as well at the enterprise level. And then I think the last piece of that, kind of, you mentioned a little bit about how you're talking to your providers, maybe for insurance. How does this data potentially impact the way money changes hands on a project, right? When you have better data about risk, when you have better data about production, how does that impact who gets paid and when? And is there a way to smooth out some of those processes? I think both of our companies are seeing some really exciting opportunities in those areas, which is great.
Yeah, I like the way you describe it, Matt. If you think about, it's not just what do field personnel not want to spend time on. Like, you don't want to spend time counting things. You don't want to spend time counting people wearing gloves or not, workers wearing gloves or not, right? Like, that's just not a great use of time. But you flip that, if all of a sudden it's not just a time sink to do it. You now have more observations than you ever could possibly have, because you're doing reality capture through StructionSite. Now and if you can automate that process, now you have data and insights that you never had before, and that gets really exciting. I mean, particularly if our customers, and what we're seeing is the leading ones they're trying to figure out, all right, well, how do we use this information in a way to help, again, reduce the drudgery, the bad work, but improve our visibility overall. There's a chance to run a better business, really, because you've got better data about what's happening.
Yeah, I think that's where this all goes. And we even look at this with our own business internally, is what data could we collect about our own business that helps us make better decisions that are going to help us be a more healthy, profitable, successful business in the long run. And when you think about our customers, it's the value of data, the value of insights is ultimately, we begin every job with a fee, and we got to do everything we can to protect it and make sure that we walk away with the amount that we plan to walk away with. And that's really hard to do. And I think that's sort of like the last level up that I see a lot of this information and like reality capture data plus tools that analyze reality capture data at scale is at the end of the day about helping our customers walk away with the share of the project that they expected to and that they planned to. And it seems like you guys are really doing some amazing things to help support that, which is awesome. I want to switch gears to one of our final pieces here, which is just thinking about the future state of reality capture, downstream applications for reality capture data, future state. And then, I know it's very sexy to sit here and talk about how we can start to predict things. But you guys are like really putting the rubber to the road on predictive analytics with the council that you started. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that too.
Sounds great. Yeah, I think the future, where this is all going, is, first of all, it's more of the same. So, we're seeing a lot more StructionSite out there, and there's a lot more observations. There's more things for Vinny to see. Like I mentioned, we're at 80 now, and growing. We're adding all kinds of stuff, equipment types. Actually, something for us to explore deeper, Matt, is we have now, to give context to Vinny's observations, we now also have a concept of like what phase of work is it in. It's not production tracking at all, but it's like, hey, is this job in excavation? Is it in structural steel, or is it in closeout?
Yeah.
And maybe there's some connections there that could be really interesting for your customers too, particularly at the enterprise level.
No, I think even at the project level, that information is super useful. It's a little bit more of like a schedule focused and phase focused view of the world, like you said, as compared to production. But I mean, I don't think you're going to meet one of our customers who's like, I don't want to know
Right.
automatically which area of my job is in what phase.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like, yes, I want to know that.
Yeah, so that'd be a really interesting, because we've come at it from the safety standpoint, where clearly there are different risks that you care about based on which phase of the work you're in. So, but where this all goes, though, as you were saying, is predictive. Is going back to this concept of, more observations is better. This is more data, or it's more like signal to feed into, hopefully, some kind of engine that can then predict what's going to happen as a result of that signal, which is happening in all, construction is, it's a huge industry. It's not always the most technology forward. So we can look at other industries for guidance. There's a ton of predictions going on in other industries. In manufacturing, they're predicting if machines on the shop floor are going to go down.
Yep.
That's just one example. There's like 20 of them. I won't go into them. But what we're doing on the predictive side is we are taking as input things Vinny sees, and we're also now combining that with other data, observations data, so what people see, and then also things like manpower, things like the weather, a whole bunch of other data, with the goal of ultimately focusing on safety and helping to predict safety risk. And so a company that's using StructionSite in an enterprise way is in a much better position, because you have more observations, and the more observations, the better, to be able to predict their risk than a company that isn't. And I think that is ultimately, going back to what people say about reality capture, what do I think what are some of the challenges? I think sometimes you'll get naysayers who say, well, that's old data, like that's lagging, what can you tell me? Well, first of all, would you rather not know? Like
you could learn a lot from that still. Yeah.
Sure. Like, hey, it's okay. It's you heard it today versus, not hearing it all. So that's point one. But point two is all that data, all those observations is really important as you build towards predictive. So we teamed up with some of our customers, and as well as some other firms that just got interested in the concept and built a predictive analytics council, which admittedly with COVID going on, it's kind of slowed down a little bit, but we'll be kicking it up back into gear here towards the end of the year. The whole goal of it is to share processes and share data to figure out what's the best way to predict risk, across the four critical areas of project delivery: safety, cost, schedule, and safety, cost, quality, and schedule. Like how can predictions work across those four? And we're starting with safety.
Yeah. No, I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, in a lot of ways, we're on a similar path, just ultimately with doing less prediction at this point for our customers. I mean, really not predicting for our customers, more just trying to see where things are. But I think there's a ton of value in that. And I think what I heard is everybody needs to go enterprise with StructionSite so that I can get more eyeballs on the job.
More observations. You guys are
your software is more powerful in the process.
Totally. Yeah. It all go. And I mean, when I think about your production tracking stuff, Matt, I mean, if you get 3 weeks of data, all of a sudden, that's sort of 3 points, right? In terms of a production rate. And then you could be like, where, just draw a line through those, or even 3 days, right?
Yep.
You're, are you anywhere close to where, you think you may need to be?
I think, I mean, there's probably a separate conversation here, even, going back to the beginning, the current state of reality capture and this issue where there's like not enough value and too much time being asked for. And now that that's shifting, I think there's even another conversation that we maybe would have to push to another day about like just the frequency of capture, right? I think it's it's very much in line with what you're saying about more observations. And like, why didn't we do more observations in the past? It goes back to that time to value problem. Right. And so I think if we can get not just like, not just take some of that work away, but make it more frequent than even it was in the past, there's, I think, new learnings we can do here. So let's close this out here with a few comments and maybe let people know how they can get started.
Yeah, great question, Matt. In terms of next steps, It's really easy. So our company name is smartvid.io. That's also our website. So if interested folks go to smartvid.io, it'll take them to our website. There's a contact us button there, and we'll be right in touch. We also have on the website some recent case studies that feature StructionSite, including a case study we did with Warfel and one we did with Barton Mallow. So super easy to see how this can work for StructionSite customers.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great way to wrap our session up and just say, Josh, we appreciate you as a human and a person. We appreciate your company and what you guys are doing at smartvid.io. We love your team. You guys are doing some amazing things. So just keep doing what you're doing, and very much appreciate you spending some time with us here today.
My pleasure, Matt. Same here for you and your team and the company. It's great working together.
Likewise. Take care, guys.